I do want to talk about something that you did a few months ago, and your heart was in the right place, I believe, and it was very, very well received, and that is the open plea to Tony Huge.
Yeah, Tony's a great guy. I've known him for probably 3 or 4 years now. I definitely view Tony as having a problem. And the reason what I base that on is I had problems myself in the past. And I know the language, and I know when you're trying to hide stuff and when you're making things look a certain way, but the compounds that he's messing with, I was just like, I don't think he understands. And I didn't understand when I was taking steroids that they were doing things to me mentally and physically. I didn't know. Like, you don't know until you get off them how they're actually affecting you. But the problem is you're actually addicted to the steroids too, because your physique. You need to keep your physique. So between like the stuff that he's using there, he's using psychedelics, which I really don't believe are addictive or anything like that. But the practices that he was doing, like he's doing injections like outside in the back alley somewhere, you know, like stuff like that. And I'm just like, dude, what are you doing? Like you know, that's bad. Like that's going to get people hurt, you know? But then he came up with the idea of doing like Nubane and, you know, getting himself off Nubane. And I was like, please don't do it, Tony. Like, just please don't do it. And then Trevor had mentioned to him, like, not to do it too. But he's like, no, well, you know, chemically, and he understood things chemically, but I'm like, dude, like anybody that would think about doing Nubane would already have a problem before they started doing it because they know what it leads to, you know what I mean? I think he looks at all these different drugs because he understands them as they're not a big deal because he can outsmart the drugs. You know what I mean? Like, well, I'm too smart to get caught on Nubane and get addicted. I'm too smart to get addicted to steroids. I'm too smart to get addicted to psychedelics or whatever. It really doesn't have to do with smart. It has to do with chemistry. When your body's chemistry gets hooked on something or addicted to something and it now longs for that all the time, you can't stop. So it's like, well, could we get Tony to get off all the drugs, get off all the steroids? Could he just stay off everything indefinitely? No. Well, that's a problem then. Like, then you have a problem, you know? So my thing was just hopefully that he would take a look at himself and be like, just be honest with himself. Because I myself was really bad at one point. And I had 2 girls tell me to my face how bad I was, like how bad off I was. Like I looked bad. Like everything about me was just a mess. And it wasn't until they said something and they weren't even that close to me that I went, wow, they're telling me I'm that bad? And then I looked at myself and I started changing once, you know, that took place. So it was really more about maybe getting him to look into his own, you know, deep into his own soul to see if he does have a problem or not. Because I do believe everybody has a problem, knows they have a problem. Whether they're in denial or not, they know that it's a problem. So that being said, I mean, what are you going to do? You know what I mean? Like you can ask him, you know, do you have a problem? Maybe he'll fight back, maybe he won't. But maybe he'll look internally in himself and decide, you know, maybe I do have something going on and get some help.
You know, and I think that he really, I think it was very well received. And I was thinking, I was thinking about doing a video or something, but like, if I was to do something like that, it would look like clickbait. It would look like I was trying to like get clout off of, you know, maybe an issue that he had. So I didn't do it. Right. But I know that I was talking to you behind the scenes, and I also spoke to Nick Trigilli off the scenes. Nick also went at him a little bit. And when I say went at him, you did an open plea, and it was very heartfelt. Nick, I think, was going to go at him a little bit harder, but he was also not looking to make it personal. He also wanted, and they ended up getting along really well. The one thing, though, that Nick did say off the record, and I do believe he might have brought it up also, Nick's a very, very good interviewer as well, is that he didn't really see, you know, for all the experimentation that Nick and his folks were doing, he didn't really see a dramatic evolution in Tony's physique. I misspoke. Right. Tony and his crew, he didn't really see a huge evolution. But again, I think Nick Trigilli's whole issue was he took exception because he thought that Tony was marketing death. Basically, you know, like you know, this fine line between taking things too far and being in that sort of gray area, you know, and maybe marketing that. And he thought maybe that was irresponsible. And I think you also had the issue, like, you know, why are you guys like pinning like a Denny's of all places or like you know? So I think it was interesting, and I think, you know, speaking volumes about Tony because he took it really, really well.
He's the nice, easygoing guy. He really is. Like, he's not what you see on social media is not an act. He's really like that. He's smart. He's intellectual. He's easygoing, and he likes to have fun. You know, I think that you know, to Nick's question as to why he didn't see the change in the physique. I mean, I'm gonna be really with you. I mean, it's not about how many drugs you take. It's about your genetics. If your genetics accept those drugs, you're going to grow like a weed. Like a lot of these pros, they don't take a lot compared to what you think they do, and they just fucking grow, right? So you have Tony, who I think that really pretty much has maxed out his genetics, and the more stuff he takes, he's not necessarily getting bigger and better. You know what I mean? He's either staying the same or starting to get some side effects and take some other drugs to counteract those side effects. I think we're seeing Tony kind of at his maxed out genetics. Now, could he push it to get even bigger? I mean, how much drugs are you going to take? And he has access to everything now. He uses growth. He uses insulin. He uses all of it. And if he's already not looking like Jay Cutler, guess what? He's not going to look like Jay Cutler. That's just all there is to it, you know?
And I think also with Tony, maybe there's a little bit of Rich Piana there also. In other words, if you're doing such great business and your stock is climbing, so is it necessary to even compete? I mean, because ultimately that's what.
Yeah, no, not at all. So, well, Tony, like, you know, there's good bodybuilders and there's good competitive bodybuilders. A good bodybuilder you can see out in the gym, like, damn, man, they look unbelievable. If they ever got on stage, they'd kill everybody. Then the person goes on stage and gets like last place. And you're like, how the hell? You know, like, and you're looking at them. So it's two different things. I think that Tony is a really good gym bodybuilder, a really good photo bodybuilder, a really good social media bodybuilder. When he gets to the shows, he doesn't like to diet. He has a hard time dieting. So for him to get in that extreme condition, he has to do extreme things drug-wise too. And I think that that stuff wouldn't necessarily over time. I don't think he'd be able to keep up with that over time health-wise. So it's like it doesn't make any sense for him. Like even if he turned pro, then what? You know, you're going to compete and get last place in the pros. Like what's the point? So it's like he's out there. He looks great all the time. He's lean all the time. You know, he never wears a shirt. You know, like if anybody looks like him, they're not going to wear a shirt, right? So he's living this like jet set lifestyle. He flies all over the world. He's using drugs legally in those countries. I mean, okay, I'm going to starve myself for 16 weeks, go get a trophy. Is it going to help my life? No. I've already done it, so I know I can do it. Like, what's the point of competing? You know what I mean? Like, and you're not going to be Mr. Olympia. You're not going to win a pro show. Probably not even going to turn pro. So I can either, you know, torture myself for this. I mean, if you really love doing it, that's a whole different ballgame. But I think that Tony likes to eat. So I feel like he wouldn't really love competing because he likes to eat too much.
No, definitely. And this is going to be a long interview, but I'm loving every bit of it. And we're going to probably do 2 parts or something like that. Because I always ask Nick Trigilli, I'm like, why do you put like part 2, part 3, like the Mac Truck interview? You had me waiting like for like 3 weeks to watch the thing. The thing is, you can't put out, like, you know, all too well from social media, you know, after like 30, 45 minutes, people, you could be telling them how to get rich and they just zone out. So I totally understand. But within the supplements, whether they are supplements or he uses them as supplements, there are things that you are very critical of that Tony uses, whether it's like the really common stuff like insulin, which you've actually been very outspoken about, or it's like fertilizers that are used.
Right.
Which you've been very, very vocal to people on social media about, like, because there's one thing to take, you know, an anabolic, which I don't know anybody that's side. It's almost like the old John Romano line, "Where are the bodies?" But these other things are quite different.
They're not for everybody. You know, like DNP is not for anybody. I've used it. It's not for everybody. Like you have to have a lot of discipline, a lot of control to be able to use that drug. You know, like so when it first kicks in, like you take a capsule of it, it first kicks in, your body temperature starts going up, and if you took a temperature, it doesn't go up. Like you can feel like you're going to explode, and it like subsides, and then it goes back up. So like if somebody doesn't have the discipline enough to know that this is happening, and you write it out and to control your carbs, they can have panic attacks on this stuff and wind up in the hospital with a panic attack. Now, when you have a panic attack and you're on DNP, that's a host of problems that you don't want. You know what I mean? Because your body temperature is going up from the DNP. It's going up because your pulse is going up. Like even a panic attack on DNP could be bad, let alone somebody taking DNP and let's say 200 milligrams works on me well. The other person's sensitive, they take it and they get screwed up from it. You know what I mean? Or they're like, oh, I took a capsule, I didn't feel anything. Oh, if you don't feel anything, take another one. They take another one, then the first one kicks in, they've overdosed. You know what I mean? Like this stuff actually happens. You just don't hear about it. You know, because it's the people that are overdosing and hurting themselves are not people in the industry. They're not people competing. They're not people that are pros. They're like the random person you never hear about because they don't understand what they're doing. They don't have the discipline. If you give it to somebody like Tony, Tony's going to eat every 2 hours. He's going to hit 40 grams of protein every meal. He's going to train for 30 minutes here doing cardio. He's going to do an hour and a half. He's going to do that stuff consistently and never miss a workout, never miss a meal. You know what I mean? He's going to make sure he sleeps 8 hours. Like he's going to do everything by the book. He'll take peptide shots every hour around the clock. That type of person can handle stuff like insulin and DNP and stuff like that because they're disciplined. They know what they're doing and they know what to watch for. So if they're feeling something weird, they know, okay, I write it out. I'm okay. You can just stay disciplined. You stay on course. I drink a little more water. Like they're more apt to be able to deal with a bad situation a lot better than somebody who's just using stuff because they saw Tony doing it, you know, and they don't really understand it and they don't have the discipline to use it.
No, 100% agree, and that's the thing too. I mean, I think with DNP, from what I've always heard, is it's the half-life that really, you know, like a lot of times people don't think it's doing anything, and then when
it's in there,
it hits you, then you're screwed. I mean, so
3 days half-life, yeah, it's a long time.
Yeah, and then with the insulin, you know, what I've always read is actually true is that it is the most anabolic hormone. It's more anabolic than testosterone, But unlike testosterone, like for example, in certain states, like the one that I'm in, you can buy it without a script. So the fact that you can, like anybody can basically have it, but they don't understand that you got to follow it up with a ton of carbs. You could, you know,
insulin, the use of insulin is so misunderstood. And we've talked about this like on multiple places. The insulin was never meant to be used by itself. It wasn't even meant to be used with steroids. It was meant to be used after growth hormone was added to the stat. So you go on your anabolics, max out your physique to whatever you're comfortable with those numbers, like over time. So let's say it's 2,000 milligrams a test, 800 milligrams a deca, whatever. You add the growth hormone in. Now your body changes again when you add the growth hormone in. After you're on the growth hormone for a little while, your blood sugar starts to not regulate properly. It starts to mess with your blood sugar. Your pancreas starts doing weird things. And that's when you add the insulin in. Because now your body's blood sugar is high, and you add the insulin in to drop the blood sugar. So it was never meant to be used by itself just to get big. It's anabolic when used in that specific instance because you have the other anabolics and the androgens working with it together. And then after a while, you're going to notice your thyroid starts to drop. You add thyroid in on top of it, like Cynomel or something like that. So it's like you're really just replacing all these different hormones in your body, not one. Like there's been people that said, went out and bought insulin. I'm just going to do insulin. Why not? It's the most anabolic hormone in the body. They put on 20 pounds of fat in a month and no muscle. You know what I mean? Like it definitely is not the magic bullet everybody thinks it is. It became the magic bullet because those guys were already on everything else and they added it to it. And the synergy worked together. That's what made it the magic bullet. But everybody left out all the other stuff they were taking. They were just talking about what insulin did. And I think that information got passed around. Like, oh yeah, once you add insulin, that really makes a difference. Yeah, but you're already on everything else. Like your body's maxed out, and the growth hormone actually needs you. Using the growth hormone, you need the insulin to bring your blood sugar down, so you don't have high blood sugar. Like that's how that whole thing works. And I think that people just hear insulin and they run out and try to use insulin. And I'm like, you don't even understand. Like when you're adding insulin to that stack, your body's hormones are so heightened on a different level. Like everything's super physiologically high. You add the insulin in, now it just matches everything else. If you have nothing else that you're taking, just jack the insulin up. You're going to have even worse reactions just from having that one hormone being too high.
And I wonder how it all got started, because I remember doing interviews like with Mighty Mike Quinn, for example. He really comes to mind, and he said that pre-mid 90s, nobody used insulin.
I know that. I think it was Jeff King. No, who's that big guy? Man, what was his name?
A lot of people say that Milos likes to use it a lot. I've heard people say that Dorian introduced it. I mean, nobody really knows where it went. It just seems like that mid 1990s mark is where all the old school 80s guys say that they started to hear about it. So,
well, Nasser was the one they called the insulin wizard. Okay. Nasser al-Somebody was the guy who was known. Him and Milos were both known for doing that. But there was a guy, Tim Belknap was his name.
Okay, I've heard
he was diabetic, and this guy was massive and lean and hard, even for back in the 80s. And I remember people saying that they were talking to him about the insulin because all he would use was insulin. He would use steroids and insulin. He was bigger than everybody else. And I think that's when people started thinking about it, like going to, because he was using it. I think he was telling people about it. Like, at least that's where I can trace it back to from the stories that I've heard over time, is Tim Belknap was the one that was using it originally for his diabetes, and he was getting good effects with it. And then the people that were a little bit smarter, like Milos and Nasser and those guys, kind of figured it out because they were already on everything else to begin with. They were on growth hormone, they were on testosterone, they were on clem, they were on thyroid. They were like, well, what happens if I throw this insulin in there? And of course, Dan Duchesne, that guy was all about it. So I think, Dan was very pivotal in kind of ushering in insulin use. Like, I'm not going to say he started it, but I think he was the one that kind of made the jump from diabetic to muscle building, and we can use this, to our advantage. I think he was kind of the first one that put it out there.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And then, of course, there's a whole GH gut, which some people say is insulin, but most people say is GH. So, I mean, there's like a whole lot of, like the whole sport changed, and the sizes changed and all that changed. But it's an interesting area.